Throughout history, there have been government officials who have fallen for money and sex. There have also been for fame. In Tilun, the governing principles of ancient China, it is said, the gravest harm for a ruler is to desire fame, because when a ruler desires fame, his ministers will know what he wants. The ministers will then flatter the ruler. In the following, Professor Yuli Liu, from the Party School of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, provides her insightful interpretation of the governing principles of ancient China. She quotes from the classics that not only does desiring money and sex lead to corruption, but desiring fame will as well. Furthermore, the latter is no less harmful than the former. Here is lectures on the governing principles of ancient China, the harm of desiring fame. Professor Yuli Liu graduated with a bachelor's and master's degree in philosophy from Renmin University of China. She is currently a professor at the Department of Philosophy at the Party School of Central Committee of CPC and a mentor for doctoral students majoring in ethics. She is also a visiting professor at Tsinghua College, Sun Yat-sen University. Professor Yuli Liu has published many academic papers, received a PhD from the University of Hull, UK, and is a postdoctoral scholar at the National University of Singapore. She has been invited to give lectures and participate in workshop seminars in the UK, Italy, the USA, Canada, Australia, Japan, Singapore, and Indonesia. In 2015, 2016 and 2017, she was invited to UNESCO headquarters in Paris to give talks based on the governing principles of ancient China. The central theme of her talks was the importance of the sage's education. In other words, learning from the wisdom of the past and also how to promote moral education. She has contributed greatly towards the dissemination of Oriental culture in the Western world. This video was edited by the Governing Principles of Ancient China translation team of the Pure Land Learning College Association and is based on the lectures by Professor Yuli Liu.
Dear friends, greetings to you all. The topic for today is the harm of desiring fame. In Tilun of the Governing Principles of Ancient China, it is said, the gravest harm for a ruler is to desire fame, because when a ruler desires fame, his ministers will know what he wants. They will then flatter him. What kind of attitude must a leader have in regards to fame? Let's continue and find the answers from Tilun. It is said, a good name complements good deeds. Fame will naturally follow those who do good deeds, but will be hard to be gained just through desiring. In the Analects, Confucius also said, do not worry about not having a position. Worry about what it requires to deserve such a position. Do not worry about not being known. Seek to become worthy to be known. In other words, we do not need to worry that we don't have a good position to display our talents. We should instead be concerned about our virtue and capability to serve society. Also, we do not need to worry that our name is not well known, but should instead pursue virtues and capabilities that are more prone to make us famous and thus respected by future generations. In short, our fame must match our virtue and ability. This is the correct attitude towards fame. Now let's look at a good example. A person who only focused on his virtue and capability and how his fame spread. According to the record compiled in the Governing Principles of Ancient China, during the period of warring states, Duke Mu of the state of Zhou, a contemporary of Mencius, was very strict with himself and led a very frugal life. He didn't require fancy food, nor did he demand extravagant clothes. He was very kind to his subjects, just like he was to his children. Despite the fact that Zhou was a small state, the large neighbouring states, Lu and Wei, dared not invade it. Other states, Qi and Chu, were not strong enough to be a threat to Zhou. When Duke Mu passed away, his people were all very sad. People in the other states also paid their respects, facing the direction of the state of Zhou. During the entire year following his death, no music was heard, as the people were too saddened by the loss of their great ruler to want entertainment. Only after 1 year did music return. Jia Yi, a scholar and politician in the Han Dynasty, commented that those who give love will have love returned to them. Those who give good fortune will have good fortune returned. Mencius also said, those who love others will be loved by all. Those who respect others will be respected by all. Therefore, if leaders can be strict with themselves, but love and benefit people, like Duke Mu of Zhou did, they will naturally be loved and respected by the people, and their reputation will naturally last for generations. But if leaders do not practice wholesome deeds and only pursue fame, what will they expect as the result? In Tilun of the Governing Principles of Ancient China, it is said, should leaders go to extremes in pursuing fame, they would invariably do so through fraudulent means. Treacherous ministers would respond to their demands using fraudulent means. Words in the Book of Changes, Zhou Yi, compiled in the Governing Principles of Ancient China, also speak of the same truth. Identical sounds echo each other, and identical characters attract each other. Leaders desiring fame will attract treacherous subordinates. When leaders are with ministers who flatter them all the time, they will be blind and deaf, unable to see the truth. The following is another example found in the Governing Principles of Ancient China. During the period of warring states, King Xuan of the state of Qi liked archery and being complimented. Although he was very strong and could draw a very hard bow, his actual draw weight was never over 180 kilograms. Once he fully drew a bow with draw weight of 180 kilograms. He then asked his servants to have a try. However, they all seemed to stop halfway and claimed, those who are able to draw the bow fully will have used a draw weight of 540 kilograms. Apart from you, my king, who else could achieve this? After that, King Xuan believed 540 kilogram was his draw weight. What do we learn from this? When leaders crave praise and recognition, treacherous subordinates will find ways to satisfy them. Thus, the leaders will never know the truth. The accounts of Duke Mu of Zhou and King Xuan of Qi both show us that leaders must cultivate themselves instead of trying to make a name. Only in this way can their names be truly passed down. If they were only focused on making a name for themselves, they would surely be fooled by treacherous people.
What is a good name? What is a bad name? From the Governing Principles of Ancient China, we learnt about Duke Mu of Zhou in the Warring States period, about his care and love for his people, and how his good name is remembered by everyone. We also learnt about King Shen of Qi, who sought praise, and how he was fooled into believing that he had really strong arms. Through these two stories, Professor Yuli Liu showed us that Duke Mu of Zhou truly loved his people and led a frugal life. The name he had gained was a good name, but King Shen of Qi sought to be praised, and his subordinates satisfied his desire by flattering him. He thought he had a good name, in turn only gained a bad name. As has been described in Tilun, a good name complements good deeds. Fame will naturally follow those who do good deeds, but be hard to gain just through craving. We have heard the stories of the past. Is the situation the same today? Let us continue with lectures on the Governing Principles of Ancient China, the harm of desiring fame.
Chasing fame not only existed in the past, we can see the same thing today. For example, some government officials want to gain fame through achievements in their work. Such desires may lead to rushed projects and deceitful behaviour. Confucius wrote of this a long time ago, and his words were recorded in the Analects, in the governing principles of ancient China. He said, "Desire to have things done quickly prevents their being done thoroughly. Looking at small advantages prevents great affairs from being accomplished." Imagine government officials who want to show others their achievements, when the only standard is the growth of GDP. If leaders work in less prosperous communities and they do not have positive economic numbers to show to their superiors, they might falsify the numbers. If the superior does not verify the numbers, then the leaders might even get promoted. Hence the saying, government officials produce numbers and numbers produce government officials. Not only government officials, today's intellectuals behave similarly. Many of them don't work hard or do thorough research as well as those in the past. In order to gain a name for themselves, it is common practice to write one article after another and publish one book after another. However, the similar contents contain nothing that will inspire readers, let alone be useful for society. Ancient intellectuals were different in that their works were truly inspirational and could bring real benefit to future generations. Even though we are living in a modern society with advanced technology, there are many things we still can learn from the people of the past. Why? First, the intellectuals of the past had pure hearts. They did not do hasty work. When they studied or wrote books, they took the time to ensure that the work was done thoroughly. For example, it took a group of great scholars 5 years to complete the governing principles of ancient China compilation. People in the past believed that one must study hard for at least 10 years before one could write good articles that could be passed down generation after generation. Thus, ancient works were of high quality. Second, when virtuous ancient intellectuals wrote, or when they did things, they did not think about their fame. They thought about how to truly benefit the people of the world. They thought about how to govern a country well and enable people to live a good life with proper jobs. With such heartfelt intentions, they produced inspiring works that have been cherished through the ages. Unfortunately, some current intellectuals focus only on fame. If those who chase fame achieve what they wanted from their superiors by using fraudulent means, then a lot of people will follow them and do the same. If a ruler is a liar and a hypocrite, but wishes the people to be upright, honest and simple, accomplishing this objective will be extremely difficult. Unfortunately, our society is now at a point where such prevailing fraudulent behaviour is commonplace. Rulers who occupy such high positions and have fewer opportunities to interact with ordinary people need honest and wise advisors to tell them the truth and assist them on the right path. If those around them are sycophants, they may speak highly of the rulers every day. If the rulers do not conduct valid investigations, they could become blind and deaf, for they would not see the reality of the situation. Such rulers might even think their country was well governed and that they were like sage kings and had achieved great peace in the world. This is how harmful flattery can be. So why is a ruler surrounded by treacherous people? It's because the ruler likes fame. If a ruler desires pleasant-sounding praise, the appointed subordinates may be mediocre at their tasks, but good at flattering and making the superiors happy. Virtuous and capable employees will be less likely to be promoted because they are not good at flattering and satisfying the superior's desire for fame. As a result, the people around the ruler would tend to be deceptive and untrustworthy. It is the ruler desiring fame who has attracted this kind of employee. In the book of Yan Zi, in the governing principles of ancient China, we find another inspiring story. 17 years after a truthful minister, Yan Zi, had passed away, Duke Jing of the state of Qi was having a banquet with his ministers. At the height of the drinking, Duke Jing took up a bow and an arrow and shot at the target. Even though he missed it completely, to his disappointment, all his ministers cheered, and as if in one voice called out, "Good shot, good shot." Angered by this, he sighed, threw down the bow and left. He was so disappointed because his ministers had markedly shown him their flattering nature. Then Duke Jing met Xuan Zhang and said to him, "Xuan Zhang, it has been 17 years since I lost Yanzi. Ever since his death, I have not heard people criticise me. I just shot an arrow and missed the target completely, yet all I heard were collective praises." Xuan Zhang, a wise minister with integrity, said, "Those ministers truly lack virtue and capability. They surely do not have the insight to notice the errors of my Lord. They lack the courage to say things that might anger you. That's why they all praised you. However, I have heard that the ministers say things, do things, and wear things to accommodate your preferences. This is like a worm whose body changes to the colour of the leaves it eats. When it eats green leaves, it turns green. When it eats yellow leaves, it turns yellow. Maybe, my lord, the root cause is you like hearing flattery." Zhang had seen through the matter, so his words went straight to the point. The reason the ministers dared not say things truthfully and offer critical advice was that the ruler liked to claim. Hearing what Zhang had said, Duke Jing understood that it was very reasonable and reflected on himself. He admitted that it was his own desire for fame that was causing all the praise and flattery. In conclusion, whether past rulers or present leaders, if they desire fame and flattery, they will be encouraging their subordinates to say complimentary things. This will encourage society to engage in more fraudulent behaviour. It will thus be very difficult for a leader, whether of a country or an organisation, to govern well.
Our current society is just as Professor Liu has said. Chasing after good performance reviews and fame has caused some government officials and intellectuals to do things in a hasty manner. Officials might falsify numbers. Intellectuals might plagiarise and then try to cover up their deeds. Such stories are often reported in the news. Therefore, Professor Liu tells us, not only are we seeing an increase in the practice of seeking fame, but many different forms of such behaviour are now appearing. All of these are corrupt, and their harm is no less serious than greed for money and sex. Professor Liu next told a story about Duke Qing of the state of Qi from Yangtze, compiled in the governing principles of ancient China, where he criticises flattering ministers. She admonishes fame-desiring leaders not to be taken in by flattery. Professor Liu further reminds us that learning the wisdom found in traditional culture and improving one's level of cultivation are the best ways to prevent the desire for fame. Let us continue with lectures on the governing principles of ancient China, the harm of desiring fame.
How can we determine whether we or others desire fame? Desiring fame can take many forms. Its heart is very subtle, thus not as obvious as the greedy heart of desiring wealth, and requires serious self-reflection to discover. Let's take a closer look at how desiring fame can be displayed. First, if one desires fame, one may have no incentive to work unless there is reward in the form of praise. For example, if we did something good and no one praised us or said nice things about us, then we will likely be less motivated to do it again. In other words, it is fame pushing us to work hard. If we are prone to this phenomenon, it means we desire fame. The second way to desire fame is that one can't accept criticism or advice. In Guidelines for Being a Good Person, it is said, if criticism makes us angry and compliments make us happy, we will attract bad company, while good friends will leave us. If we are uncomfortable with criticism, then no one will bother to give us any comments or suggestions. Usually it is those who are closest to us who, upon seeing that we are about to take a wrong path, would worry about us, and tell us and even offer us criticism. But if we are proud leaders and used to flattery, then we may not accept criticism and suggestions, even from our closest friends or relatives. We might even begin to hold grudges, and eventually we might find ourselves drifting away from all our friends and relatives. Leaders need virtuous and upright people around them to give straightforward good advice. How do we make this happen? In Guidelines for Being a Good Person, it is said, if we are appreciative of criticism and uneasy with compliments, people who are virtuous, sincere and trustworthy will gradually become our friends. What attitude should we have to criticism? Be joyful. Zilu, Confucius' student, was joyful when hearing criticism from others and very happy to accept it for his own improvement. Yu the Great, a sage king of the past, was an even better example. He would prostrate to the person who provided him with proper criticism. Those who can do this will definitely enjoy the good company of virtuous people. In the School Sayings of Confucius, compiled in the Governing Principles of Ancient China, we can find sayings like this: the medicine is bitter, but is good for treating disease. Truthful words are rough to the ear, yet are good for correcting mistakes. The Shang dynasty and the Zhou dynasty prospered because King Tang and King Wu had great ministers who were very brave and would provide honest and straightforward advice. The Xia dynasty and the Shang dynasty diminished because King Ji and King Zhou only had ministers who obeyed decisions and instructions and dared not provide straightforward advice. Without the ministers who remonstrate with rulers, the rulers who can avoid mistakes never exist. The same applies to sons and fathers, younger brothers and older brothers, and friends and officers. The above reminds us that the hardest thing for one to accomplish is to know oneself, what we can do. Confucius provided his solution in Analects, compiled in the Governing Principles of Ancient China. He said, when seeing that others lack morality, we should reflect on ourselves to see whether we are the same. We should be grateful that that person's presence reminded us whether we were facing the same or a similar problem. Another way to truly know ourselves is to have true good friends or relatives to point out our mistakes. But the condition for this is that we must have a big heart to be able to accept criticism and not try to find excuses when criticised. The third way to desire fame is that upon doing a good deed, no matter how trivial, or after some achievement, no matter how small, one wants to make sure everyone knows about it. The person would then try and tell everyone about the trivial deed. This is another form of desiring fame. The fourth way to desire fame is that one always wants to hold an important position and be respected and praised by others. If not respected enough, the person will become upset. The previous are 4 manifestations of desiring fame. Let us all reflect upon ourselves and see if we have the same desire. I myself often do so to see if I have the tendency to desire fame. For example, I give lectures quite often and sometimes have very enthusiastic audiences. However, after I have left the venue, I try to reflect to see if I would be overjoyed if someone in the street were to ask in great surprise, "Are you Professor Liu?" Would I think in such a way that, wow, I am quite well known and a lot of people know me? Also, when people say, "Professor Liu, could we have a photo with you?" Would I be overjoyed and think, wow, I am so famous, a lot of people try and have photos with me? If I had such intentions, I'd be desiring fame. When we are praised, we should remind ourselves with the teachings in the Guidelines of Being a Good Person that if we are appreciative of criticism and uneasy with compliments, people who are virtuous, sincere and trustworthy will gradually become our friends. Receiving a compliment, we should ask ourselves, are we virtuous? Do we deserve praise? We should feel uneasy, like walking on thin ice. We should remain cautious when talking in case misquoting from the classics and misguiding people. Desiring fame in real life can be very subtle and easily neglected. Therefore, when we are praised, we should reflect upon ourselves. We should ask ourselves whether we have done our best. we should also accept criticism and correct our mistakes when we are wrong. In the next part, we will discuss other ways of desiring fame.
In the previous part, Professor Liu summarised different ways of desiring fame. It is quite natural for one to want to become famous, especially from good things. However, if one's purpose of doing things is only for fame, then this would run counter to the naturalness and good conscience in doing things. If government officials were to do this, they would create a lot of problems for the future. Others would flatter and even bribe those government officials to achieve their personal purpose and eventually lead those officials to ruin themselves, their work and even their country. La Fontaine, a famous French classical writer, said, "The life of every flatterer is at the expense of the flattered." In order to avoid such a calamity, one must bear in mind the teachings in Guidelines of Being a Good Person that if we are appreciative of criticism and uneasy with compliments, people who are virtuous, sincere and trustworthy will gradually become our friends. Let us continue with lectures on the governing principles of ancient China, the harm of desiring fame.
There are also other ways to desire fame. For example, the inability to deal with frustrations. If a student has always been first in exams and then one day he or she falls to second, how would he or she feel? Students who usually achieve superior exam results can sometimes find it is hard to accept a lower ranking in class. They might even start to experience psychological issues. What is the root cause? It is due to their desire for fame. Jealousy is another form of desiring fame. Some students cannot accept the fact that there are others who are better than them or who are the centre of attention. For example, when the teacher praises another student, they might think they are better, so why isn't the teacher praising them? The same applies to someone at work. In such situations, jealousy and anger become the dominant emotion. In the treatise on response and retribution, we find, regard the gains of others as if we have gained. Regard the losses of others as if we have lost. This is the proper attitude. This is empathy. If we feel uncomfortable upon seeing others enjoying greater fame than us, we have been affected by our desire for fame. For example, some teachers, when among other teachers, might worry about whether their lectures are more popular compared to others. Such behaviours are all examples of desiring fame. From Liao Fan's 4 lessons, we learn that those who have great fame but lack the virtue to support it will eventually encounter overwhelming adversities. Not only should leaders reflect upon themselves whether they desire fame, we must also reflect on our own subtle intentions. Let us not be bound by the intention to desire fame. Let us not worry about whether we are popular. On the contrary, let us be vigilant and examine whether our reputation reflects our virtue. Otherwise, we might encounter unexpected calamities.
After describing the many different kinds of harm that could befall those desiring fame, Professor Yuli Liu quoted from Liao Fan's 4 lessons. Those who have great fame but lack the virtue to support it will eventually encounter overwhelming adversities. She admonishes us once again. Good names are praised to promote their good deeds. People who practice good deeds will be respected. If they do not practice good deeds, but only desire fame, then, at best, they may gain undeserved reputation, but then overwhelming adversities will follow. The greatest calamity for a leader is to desire fame. On the other hand, if we are constantly mindful of our self-cultivation and practicing good deeds, we will gain a good reputation naturally. This is similar to a verse found in a song. When not seeking a name, a good reputation spreads widely.
At last, I wish that all leaders could study traditional culture, not desire fame, and use their existing reputations to guide society on the correct path and to promote the moral teachings such as filial piety, sibling love, loyalty, honesty, trustworthiness, propriety, righteousness, frugality, and shame. In so doing, these leaders will have a truly good reputation which reflects their deeds. This is the end of today's talk. Thank you.